You're watching Chronicle Chamber. My name is Scott, and today we are talking about the final issue of the Defenders of the Earth series at Mad Cave Studios. This is Defenders of the Earth issue 8, the finale to the first run in this installment, but we are getting a teaser that there is more on the way. Let's check it out. Defenders of the Earth issue 8, the final issue, was written by series writer DiDio, with art by Jim Calafiore and colors by Juancho. Carlos M. Mangual also did letters here, and if you've been reading this series, this issue picks up right off of the tail end of issue 7, which is part 1 of the grand finale. This is part 2. Massive spoilers ahead. There's really no way to avoid us, but the end of issue 7, Flash Gordon, Rick Gordon, and Kshin hopped in a rocket and they went to the ice station that Kro-Tan is from to try to stop this war as Kro-Tan's army invades the Seven Nations. Starts off right on some action beat where the missile or the rocket they're in has a missile coming right towards it. So we see this, exasperated expression right on the opening page. It is a cool starter, just throws you right into the action. It's a great way to start a final issue. As they're talking about, what do they do, panicking about it, we see the rest of the cast. Here's Kshin, here's Zuffy, who's also with them. Missiles getting closer and closer, but Flash Gordon remembers he has a solution to this. So, we have this back and forth. The colors here are pretty cool because, you have this alert and alarm system going off. So what started off as blue then becomes like this red. That's kind of neat. That cascades over everything. And then we have our paneling that culminates into this explosion here where we see our heroes have jumped out on sky skiers, which were stashed in storage that, Flash was planning to give to his son Rick as a birthday gift. The gift doesn't last long because these things, can't really work in the ice. They crash, throwing everybody off the vehicle, beat for beat. Our heroes are now in the snow. Worried about freezing out here because it's so cold. As you can see, the breath on Kshin's here is freezing in the air. They're all freezing in the next panel. But we have this fast-paced rhythm where, problem solution going on here. Where, they're a bit worried about freezing to death out here. But luckily, Kshin knows the way to the ice base. And there it is. So it's a fun action opener, but it's also a little convenient just because it's, one problem, a solution, another problem, a solution, and then another problem and a solution right off the bat. We go back to the Seven Nations where the rest of the Defenders of the Earth are battling Mongor and Kro-Tan's ice army. So this is, turn the page, this is a buffet of color and action and paneling going on here. We have Lothar, screaming about, what's going on up here. We have, the Phantom, Mandrake, and Jedda, who is now the new Phantom. If you read the last issue, she has been granted the power of the 10 Tigers, and she is easily taking these ice soldiers to task. The Phantom is, worried about her, and we have this little back and forth between the Phantom and Mandrake about how, even though she's got the Phantom powers now for this Defenders of the Earth series, our old school Kit Walker is, he's worried about her like a father would be for a daughter. So, he's channeling his worry into anger and frustration, and we see him punching a ice soldier himself. And Mandrake kind of comes in with a witty comment there saying, if that works for you, I fully support it. But we have more of this, just back and forth. Lothar comes into contact with Garrix, who is a regular, general for Ming's army and now Kro-Tan's army for the Defenders of the Earth series. We have this, a lot of this is just really functional dialogue here in terms of leading us through the action, as they're battling their way through Mongor and these ice soldiers, and the problem is they're on the losing end because we have an endless stream of ice soldiers. We really don't see them being overwhelmed in the art and the paneling here, but we read about it in the dialogue. And that's where, Mandrake has another ace up his sleeve. And we see, as they're talking, he has this little kind of a smirk on his face here. The art overall, this issue is, is pretty good overall. The action is very, easy to see the beats. The paneling is done in a way where you can follow it pretty quickly. And the colors, honestly, are the one thing about this series that has been consistently strong and beautiful. My only complaints are we have this beautifully detailed face of Mandrake's right here. When he's talking about he has a way to save everybody, but there's this worry on his face and this tension. It's great to read, and that's one of the benefits of the series is we do get those close-ups. They're fantastic, but then we have Mandrake down here where his face is, the proportions are a little bit off. So that's one of the things where there is a little inconsistency. This ending in general feels kind of, there's a lot going on and there's a lot to wrap up, and it's just more action heavy, but it doesn't really put everything in a neat and tidy bow. That's probably my big complaint here. Anyway, we go back to Flash, Rick, and Kshin and Zuffy. They get into the base. It is Rick who has been coded into the, security system by way of Dale Arden, who unlocks the base and gets them in. They're in. They talk to their mom, who, for those who need a reminder, she is in the computer system here. That's where Dale lives. So she's guiding them along. They're talking about how Zuffy actually, his eyes are feeding information to Kro-Tan. So Kro-Tan knows every single one of their moves. And that's when we get Kro-Tan himself appearing before them on the TV screens, overriding where Dale was. And, we have another trap. They're being gassed. While they're, down and out, we see Flash coughing. Kshin, this is where Kshin has his big moment. He's been training with magic, and he uses his magic to dispel the gas, and the doors open. They get out, except for Kshin, who is trapped inside. So there's nothing they can do. And this, honestly, is the cool part of the issue, my personal favorite part. Going back to Mandrake's, ace up his sleeve, the past issue we saw Mandrake giving out toys of himself to children. It's kind of a sweet moment. It was played as kind of a caring, fun moment for Mandrake the Magician, but here it serves a functional purpose. These toys are more than toys. They are a secret army he has been implanting everywhere, and they grow in size, portal opens, and bam. This glory shot. This is probably the best part of the issue, this two-page spread of action as these robots join the battle and help our defenders. And we have nice shots of here's LJ, Jedda, Phantom, and we have Lothar and Shakara watching from this little panel in the corner here as Mandrake's army takes everybody to task. It's kind of fun to look over this because you have Mongor, the giant serpent, in the background. More action shots. Here they are taking care of Mongor. And then we go back to the real part of the issue here, the final tidbit to piece together. So Rick is being strangled by, this other part of this trap Kro-Tan's put down for them. It's kind of unclear what this thing is here. I'm not quite sure if that was supposed to be a mind-controlled Kshin or just some kind of robot ice soldier from when Kro-Tan in an earlier issue was turning humans into soldiers. But we have this battle, they're fighting. Kro-Tan is monologuing about how he mind-controlled Flash, and, we have this conversation about how he tricked Flash into thinking he killed Ming, and now Flash knows it wasn't. He was mind-controlled. They battle back and forth, and as they're fighting, we have kind of a, flame sword battle here that ends with Flash, coming in and taking care of business with the help of that ice soldier there who actually snaps Kro-Tan's neck. So we have this, banter, and then it's really, this ice soldier here. You can see the snap here. It's kind of off panel. So Flash is intact. He's not a murderer, but he is kind of on the verge of it. We see his anger here, especially in this panel where he's, about ready to take Kro-Tan to task. And we see the reverse here. It is kind of a nice juxtaposition, this shadowing effect on both of them, in different parts of this sword battle here. But the base itself is going to go nuclear, and they have to shut it down. And that's the last emergency. And the last real point of tension is if they shut this base down, they kill Dale Arden, or at least her consciousness that's in this computer. But there's no way around it, and so Flash, Rick comes in here. He doesn't want to do it because he's going to kill his mom, but Flash does what they have to do to save the Earth. And so we have this brief moment where Rick is upset. But We know that her consciousness, as we find out from the dialogue, is in 2 places. Dale's signal, it's still active, 2 locations. Right there from Kshin, who is now using crutches. The action is open for now, but this is where we end on a cliffhanger of sorts. The series is over. The 8-issue mini is completed. And we see this coming soon, Defenders of Mongor, ? Where, now that they have defended Earth, the Dale is alive. They need to go find her and bring her home. So they're going to take their action to Mongor, which, for those who aren't fully up on their Flash Gordon lore, that is where Ming the Merciless is from, where Kro-Tan is from, and Princess Castra, who was a bigger part of the series earlier on, but she kind of left with Kro-Tan last issue. And a point about that, actually, Kro-Tan mentions Kro-Tan and Princess Castra leaving, a few pages back from where we're at now. And my theory in reviewing these up to this point was that, we know from some of the side stories that Kro-Tan has the consciousness of Ming the Merciless inside of it. So, I was theorizing that we'd see Ming the Merciless reappear by the end of this issue, but it seems like maybe they are holding out on that reveal for the next series when they go back to Mongor. But I'm still in the camp that in a Defenders of the Earth series or story upcoming, we're going to see Ming the Merciless coming back, and now that Kro-Tan's gone, maybe it'll be, Defenders and good old Ming duking it out instead of the Defenders against Ming's spawn. But that's it for now. We don't have a date on when Defenders of the Earth will return. We just know it will. Until then, coming up in September, we have the Mad Cave Studios The Phantom series, which, any guess, it's anyone's guess if this ties in or not. I am leaning towards this does not tie into Defenders of the Earth. I imagine this will be a separate storyline, just because we still have that from the world of Flash Gordon at the bottom of this series, and maybe this is something that's a little more loosely connected to the whole Flash Gordon series. There's more than one currently ongoing at Mad Cave Studios. I hope you enjoyed that review. For more Defenders of the Earth or the Phantom news, reviews, and more, check out chroniclechamber.com. If you want to hear more from me personally, you can visit my site at scottwaldenwrites.com or check out writerscott.bsky.social at Blue Sky. Thanks for watching.